Daily trading recap for Tuesday, the 21st of December, 2021. Already halfway through this week already, since we're taking off Friday for this Christmas holiday weekend. SPY very nice bounce day today. I was trying to call it yesterday to see this thing have such a quick V reversal off of this, call it double bottom area on that 450. I was skeptical of it, did think we could potentially see some 460 maybe reclaim action around there, but thought we would see some tumbling back down to that potentially closer to that 450 area today, but just continued on chugging. My Roth is certainly loving it. I'm still heavily long for the century time frame that way, but great volatility still. Let's see what VIX is at just for reference as well before we get into dollar volume on the day as well. VIX is still just under 22 now, it looks like, so dropping off a little bit back closer to right around that 20 mark. That, learning from that S&B Mike Bellafiore, we love to see just kind of that $20 mark for some reason acts as some point of get you in that market, just get you excited, that 20 mark. So continue to watch volatility around here in the rest of this trading year. Dollar volume on the day, NASDAQ, $213 billion volume as of 20 minutes after the close here. Nice see, $262 billion volume, very low to see, but it is pretty fairly close after the close here. NOTC is $2.4 billion volume of the day. 4 traders that just turned into 5 traders for me. I just took a little very cheeky short here on GRTX that I'll get into at the end, but kind of 4 real trades that I was short on 2 of them, long on 2 of them. 5 for 6 if you're calling them. The in and outs that I did try to do on some of those thesis ones, and today was a little bit too, of course, then I'm still on the paper side on all my longs and still paper trading with my shorts, or just still with my longs. I'm very small position size, just kind of paper that way, but just going through the motions of actually clicking the button through my cash account. But still very educational, experimental, fine tuning and blocking out a lot of the other variables of what is involved in trading in. So still just kind of separating the emotion of the actual money itself, separating the position sizing and risk reward type of aspect in there. And today too, I was especially refining that even harder to say, I'm looking for the trade itself. And if it doesn't go really directly what I think it's going to do from when I enter or when I exit, or when I enter, of course, then I'm just going to exit. I'm going to drop it and move on to the next one and say, okay, I was wrong on that thesis. Let's clear the head, clear the playing field, and let's move on to the next one. So we'll see that play out on a few of these where I was getting an entry there, or getting an entry started in at this spot and think, okay, I think it's this move is going to set up potentially from here. And it would not necessarily defining a risk level from that point, or going in looking for a specific profit target, or looking at, okay, I'm definitely going to cut at this point, but looking at the chart to say, okay, I think this type of move is going to happen. And if it didn't necessarily happen, or if it was still within just kind of an obvious little risk range that you could hold yourself to within that, if that wasn't working out, then I said, okay, cut it and move on to the next one. Because I definitely have worked myself into that problem many times before, whereas I hold on to these trades and still go to that thesis that, okay, well, my risk tolerance, my risk hasn't been broken yet, but the trade's not really going in my favor. And I think that attesting to that, normally I would not account for that in my predicting of the future before I even took the trade of what are the potential routes that this chart could take today. And of course, the millennium, that whatever number we want to define it, the ways that in which these charts can operate, but you of course can't predict every single one of them. But going with what the, again, market sentiment is of how are these charts working and what are the potential ways that this chart could move today. And of course, growing in experience and just getting in the screen time is going to build that database in my head mentally of what these things could potentially do, but also just taking in the fact of what have we been seeing these past few trading days and what's most likely to happen with this type of sector, with this type of volume, with this type of price movement, and defining the areas that way. So it's, again, I go back to, for where I'm at in my trading career right now, I just have to completely and 100% deal with one issue and one thing. And that's what I've not been doing so great. And my win rate, I think, is the biggest place in general that I just need to start keying in on. And that's where really it takes off from there, because to size a trade from 10 shares to 100 shares to 1,000 shares isn't really that big of a deal. If, of course, what I'm doing is in these liquid stocks. But that's not the biggest of deals. So position sizing really isn't an issue. And I know mentally too, of course, for some reason, my brain works a little bit better when I am taking bigger position sizes. For some reason, it's just that little bit more of maybe adrenaline equated to, or just that little bit more fine focus where I do push myself a little bit harder. It's not so much that I'm like, squeezing or compressing that spring so hard that it just busts open, but it is that, okay, this is go time. This is what we're here to do. And that's the level that is going to be the next step for me that I know to fine tuning that to say, do not let that factor overwhelm your psyche of what you're trading. Let that fear creep in or any FOMO in that. Not necessarily that it's FOMO, but just like trading the P&L, not the trade itself too. So I think that's going to be another step for me and a separate little addition to once we start mastering, hey, let's put the grind and put the reps in on this key area of what trading is. And so still for right now for me, it's getting in the right charts and getting in the right trades. So today I think was a great step in that, and still having to put the weight on the times that I do get those little stop outs. They're just like very minor, like very break even trades almost, where I'm in the trade here. Okay, it's not performing what I think it's going to do. Okay, it's going against me. Okay, this is totally different than what I thought it was going to do. Exit, get out, clear the headspace, move on to the next one, rather than still being in the trade and saying, okay, it's moving against me, but it's not broken an obvious risk level here. And that's another element to it too, is defining that risk level. And for this specific and different patterns that I'm trading, what risk tolerances are really needed or required by the chart and by the markets in general for that type of trade to work out in the end. But overall in general too, it's I want to be focusing more on the positive, but of course keeping the balance of dealing with reality and the positivity aspect of it, but focusing more and putting more of my attention on allowing myself to be in the headspace more often with more time allotted to it in the actual trade working out versus just the bag holding a kind of trade where it's, maybe there's not that much volume and it's not necessarily working out so awesome, but it hasn't broken a key risk level yet, so it could work out. So I'm trading smartly by not just cutting it randomly because it hasn't broken my risk level. But I think that type of thinking is a little bit of wasting time for me and a little bit of wasting mental capital on those types of trades too. Whereas I could be saying, the trade that I thought was going to happen is not happening, and it's a little bit like wishy-washy almost to say, okay, we're just going to get out of it and just lose it because it hasn't worked out yet. I'm going to lose some. Some are going to slip through the cracks because that's just what trading is. I'm not going to be perfect that way. But I know a vast majority of those ones, I'm going to save so much more mental capital by getting out of that and moving on to the next one as compared to trying to like pretend these trades are still working. And it's not something crazy like a wide margin. I'm not like swing trading with these crazy wide margins, but it's these little intraday trades that they're losing trades and the signs are there that this trade isn't working, but I'm still trading smartly and cutting losses when they need to be cut, which is one of my rules, and just defining the trade that way. But I think there's so much more value in just I'm defining and saying before I get in the trade, I think this is what's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, or after that, it's pushing signs and saying, okay, this is not going to happen, then exit and move on to the next one and just free up that mental space to also have an open perspective, not only to the chart itself, but on both sides of that. Whereas normally I would kind of handcuff myself to say, okay, I look at this chart, I think it could be a nice and long opportunity today. Whereas there could be a lot of signs pointing to, this is a nice short opportunity today. So that's really when I want to open myself up and key myself in on more and more on all of these charts too, and continue to just press that harder and harder. So long-winded introduction on that. And then I wrote in my journal as well too of just another great lesson of just gotta eat the shit, right? This game isn't about being correct. If you want to do that, then go get a dog, right? Or go do something else. But that's what I have to constantly remind myself. Great reminder of that today. For some reason, just pre-market and even in the morning session, it's just that little voice was just like, why? Again, that negative voice of why are you doing this? And why are you paper trading in general? Like, what are you doing? What's the value in it? And, oh, terrible trader, you're taking losing trades. You're just stupid. You don't know what you're doing. All those like stupid negative voices that come in. And it was just another day of grinding over those and reaffirming of who I know that I am to be, and just continuing to put in the work, put in the screen time and the hours to fight against that, because that voice is really always going to be there. But it's just, I know that I'm stronger than that. It doesn't have to have the same loudness each and every single day that it normally does that way. So, and I think definitely as I continue to evolve a little bit more in my preparation skills, I think that definitely saves me a heck of a lot more too, compared to normally when I would try to like fight against that voice or that obvious, all the demons of the FOMO and the just all those demons that are involved in trading. To deal with those becomes a heck of a lot easier when the preparation to fall back on is so well based and supplemented behind that trading. It just becomes a far easier battle when you can lean on such a great support as that preparation before the market open, of course, is in order to lean on that way. So I want to mention a few charts here. We went over dollar volume on the day just for reference. QNRX, these few charts in ARDS. We've got to keep our eye on, or I'm going to keep my eye on these first green day movers, 2 of these, and then RELI as well, a little bit too. Very different floats and different sectors and different charts in generals. But again, it's the overall market sentiment of what the potential of these charts can be. QNRX, Chris traded a little nice perk off of that 2-minute bottom. Sold pretty well right there for a nice little 10% gain on that one. But sentiment for me on this, the overall trend on this one for the morning session especially was downtrend death. And that's what I want to look for and be a part of is bleeding, if it's a short side trade, bleeding, dying, does not look appetizing whatsoever to be a dip bottom, to produce any amount of little dip buys. Sometimes it can, and that attracts in a few more longs to eventually end up spiking through that bottom supports to create even newer lows from that. But other than that, I just want to be a part of the bleeding, dying. Sometimes it doesn't have to be so slow, but just consistent pushing of new lows and death that way, like this chart was today. And then ARDS as well too. I couldn't even trade this one through Thinkorswim for some reason. But the same type of sentiment for the morning session was just give you a little perk here. Maybe we come closer to VWAP as a little test, but shows some amount of support just in that morning opening bell volatility that's there. But then just overall bleeding death and mainly an easy sit to sit through as a short. So again, like I mentioned, not like it's a hard trade, or of course I'm not going over the fundamentals of these charts either, the backstory on all these, but just taking in the fundamentals of if the market is going to continue to stay on all these. And I'll mention RELI2 is a little bit different, had a little bit of a perky and actually a halt as well too, but see it get a little toppy. And just post of that little morning session, we do see continual fade and nothing really more coming of the afternoon session as well. So on all 3 of these, which is a big percentage of the movers today too, a big percentage of the stocks on the scanner today, we're showing, okay, the sentiment overall through all of the halting and little short scares and VWAP reclaims, the overall sentiment was still down. So factoring that into the type of time frame and perspective, we could potentially trade upon that. So that's going to be a key area going forward, I think, to keep a note of if that continues to play out. And it's going to be a little bit tough too, because it's that holiday season. If volume starts to come back or pick up or drop off for some reason, that could change things up a little bit, but keeping our eye on it. Charts, let's get into today for trades. PPSI, I'll start off on, again, this 4 million floater just for reference. Electrical equipment company, this is a former runner. News catalyst today was a $12 million order. It's going to increase some revenue. Awesome, whoopee, good for them. They still got like $16 million raisable potentially through shelf and an ATM. And this 424B5 from the 13th of this month adds a possible another $8 million. So this is the biggest volume in pre we've seen, and of course aided by this news catalyst today, but at least in 3 weeks, the biggest volume in pre-market going back to start of the month of December when I think this is the biggest perspective here, or even 1, 2, 3, kind of around here when it had this big after hours day on that Monday to Tuesday day here around there. That was really the only closest recollection we could attest to of anything in pre-market itself as compared to market hours volume action. So this one, I just kind of had to evolve to, even though it was still in this monthly setup, over a monthly, 2 monthly type hold here trade, and just how choppy and inconsistent that daily is. I kind of viewed this one as that first green day short. And again, a lot of these too, I'm kind of denying that at this point, not necessarily, but I'm still not really keyed on to the fact again of these morning dump potentials. It's not a full morning dump setup as I've created it or defined it for myself, but a lot of these are that VWAP failure to maintain that line has shown, if you're still respecting that high of day as a risk level, are showing that there's a lot more downside to this one as they continue to test there and show that they can maintain that level throughout the rest of the day as a short through there. So again, pairing that into the introduction of watching those first screen days ones, if the sentiment is short, then we'll have to follow along with that one. So this one, like I mentioned with the introduction of my sentiment is short. So that first trade is I'm looking for the break of this low here, of the longs that are potentially looking in, okay, we're basing here around this $9 whole dollar level area. It's going to be nice little bounce here. We're going to reclaim VWAP. We're going to yippee, hooray, woohoo, do whatever in market hours. But I'm looking for the break of that and then continue to see this thing die off into the open and then continually through the rest of market hours as well. As soon as it tried to and rejected that, bounced right back. I said, as it's pressing these highs here, I gave it enough of a leash to say, okay, I'm not just kind of panicking out or cutting you so quickly, but I'm giving you a little bit of breathing room, just enough, just like barely tightening that leash and saying, okay, as we're getting here to this point, this chart is not doing what I thought it was going to do. Cut it, move on to the next one, clear the head, refreshen the palette with whatever that stuff is they do at sushi places and clean the little hands with the little soup bowl. And then move on to the next one. Have the headspace open to not be just kind of bag holding of, oh, well, I still have a position here of, well, do I hold it? Do I add here? Just, okay, eliminate that stupid. Let's move on to the next one. So we do actually end up getting classic little within these first few minutes of market open, get a VWAP attempt of reclaim with big volume there. And we see the reject, failure to maintain that. I obviously would have getting short in that perk around 935-ish, actually. I think it's paper, of course. I don't take any weight on what my actual executions were because it's tough with the setup of having to scroll back and forth that way too, but it's whatever. It's the best we got right now. But playing off that, obviously, if we were spiking back above this 9.6 level, back above VWAP, I would have been cutting, saying, okay, definitely wrong on that trade. There is more volume behind this one. That was the wrong thesis again on this one. So, but we do actually get the pull to new low of day pretty much from there. As it was recovering decently, I said, okay, I'm taking profit as it's there. Not trying to risk anything crazy because it is holding it pretty nicely. I was expecting and kind of wanting to see it fall off harder from this point, like a candle like this, which eventually it did roll over to in this candle, but it was very, very quick. And shame on me, and a great reminder too that 8.4-ish kind of was it's 10% level around that point. And that's what I'm kind of keyed into, even though it may not be the full position size that I may cover at that point. I know if it's at 10% profit from my entry, I'm definitely taking off some. I've not seen a chart or a trade pattern in a long time where if it's at 10%, unless it is a swing or, regardless of that, but if it's at 10%, there's a huge chance I'm at least taking some off of the table, some of my position off. So to not have an order already in at that point, and respecting the quick price moves that these things can do, to have my order potentially in on the top of that stack of orders to get filled in any quick flush like that. That was a great representation of it, because then I end up having to sit through this little wickedness attempt and just stupidity for the next hour after that almost. That is the reason why you have those order ins, and great lesson again to relearn today from that too. So still having it took off like a quarter or a third in that move, and then seeing this pull here, it's okay, we're putting in higher lows at this point. It's again still not A plus what I thought it was gonna do, but the opportunity is still there. It's not, I'm giving it enough leash. It's still within the boundaries of in my mind's eye of an acceptable trade. And then we're seeing here, okay, the big volume trying to attempt to push this thing to new high day here, fails, rejects. Okay, we're not breaking to new lows from that point. It's not rejecting there. So covering again with of a half a position I covered at. So it's having like a quarter or a third left to say I still think the probability is there that this thing pushes lower, but it's just not showing the signs as of yet. So covering smartly, taking profits as they're there, and just not trying to force more out of the chart than is actually there. But keeping in the back of my mind too of these types of charts, how many times I've been just screwed over in the past of these stupid little wiki tops here. And as we get to this point, we get in this first little step of 9.2, that point there, I'm totally keyed on it, and I'm totally prepared because of how many times it's happened before to say, I know you're going to try to squeeze here. I know I wrote in my journal the phrase I like to see. It's just this little volume or little volatility accumulation trend. It's not like it's actually going to go against you. It's the snake of the market that is the market. It's just looking for food, and it knows the stops of these shorts are going to be closer around this area. And again, I don't think it's any coincidence whatsoever, or find it funny that this 9.4-ish area, which also coincides with where VWAP was at the time, and also where this first little right out of the gate perk was. We've seen that so many times on the morning dumpers as well in pre-markets. They love to respect those levels very, very well. And should this thing have gone a little bit past it, that's what just stocks do. That's what they are. They love to manipulate and squeeze out. But this is a reassurance and reaffirming in my mind for these charts that have this little sell-off right out of the gate for the big pre-market push. If they had that little sell-off, little dip bottom, they try to reclaim VWAP. Gosh, more times than not, I still feel the probabilities there. Just load up, and respect our risk level to an extent. If this thing started to push against that $10 level all the way up to here at this point, okay, then you get to the point of maybe there's a little bit more in the tank on this one, and it's a totally different chart. But this again was a reassurance. So I was covering in the sense of, okay, I wasn't planning for this thing to reclaim. It was still going to be in my mind's eye just another fader. There was a lot more opportunity out there for retail traders to be looking at, and a lot of potential overhead on this bad boy just from its multi-day hold here. We could see just a nice continual downtrending fade on this one. But again, I call it getting played out, but I knew it was going to happen potentially. So the entries and exits have to speak for themselves. I can sit here and proclaim that, I knew that was going to happen the whole time, but price pays. Getting filled there is just kind of stupid and just a slap in the face again, but you got to learn. And it's a growing lesson every single day. So for idea, for me, grade on the trade, gave myself an A it wasn't necessarily what I totally expected to happen, but the opportunity was there. And should I have looked at this through a little bit different of a lens and tweaked it a little bit different and give myself a grade for the execution side, I'd give myself a C. Had I played it a little bit different and maybe been covering a little bit more here in these pushes here, or respecting that what I knew in my head that was going to potentially happen, these little fake outs or quick little flashes above VWAP that eventually get rejected, and this of course then slammed to a new low of day. Playing off of that and factoring that into the trade, that would have made this a totally different trade in itself too. But still, otherwise, nice on that one, and great learning lessons again. I'll try to keep this moving along quickly here. SPRB, third day player, this American biotech, 4 million floater. In this little, love the downtrending daily on this bad boy, but again, just lackluster volume compared to that first screen day move that it did, that I thought was going to be a potential short play on that first screen day again, and then I didn't play it yesterday on Monday. I thought I did, but I did not. For a nice little sell-off, kind of rest day on that second day. Moving a little bit in after hours, but again, it's just kind of like just chopping around, doing whatever it wants to do, and pre-market today. So then I'm looking at this one of the potential wedge that it's setting up here. Looking on this scale, that's not the one. This one of kind of getting these bottoms here, creating these nice little lines, maybe a little bit better of a line here. Yeah, a little bit of that. And then from this top, of course, down on into here, rudimentary lines, but seeing a little bit of a wedge here, looking on the intradaily perspective that way of, okay, well, I was a little bit biased on this one long because of just how it was building from yesterday and the moves it was putting in after hours on yesterday, and seeing, okay, if we get a little bit of volume here, it is a low floater, 4 million floater. Let the trajectory of this one prove itself, let it establish, but I did get a little bit cheeky with going long on that first attempt to say, okay, it's building kind of nicely here. I could see this thing start to slab above 4.6, and then we could just very easily and quickly 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 rip through there, have a pre-market trade that was potentially another factor that I was trying to predict the future with that long trade. But excuse me, this one, a great reminder again to, or great example again too of what the same thing I did on PPSI. Okay, it's breaking against me now. It's under VWAP. That is not really doing what I think it's going to do. It's still in the boundaries of this little wedge line, but I thought the move was going to happen directly from here. Okay, readjust, move on to the next one, or move on. Let it do what it wants to do. Let it breathe. But let's keep a clear conscience as it does that, especially with how close it was to market open. let it do what it wants to do. So it had a little sell-off. I'm watching other charts. It's bouncing off at the top of that range there, kind of perfectly for the line I drew. But bouncing off again, selling off, and then I see it start to break pretty nicely through not only low a day, but showing some strength and signs to say, okay, now it's at the bottom range end of that wedge. So to say, now this trade's starting in short off of that candle. I'm looking for it had this little bounce off of the lows here. I'm looking for a continual break through that and just sharp drop off here to pick up some potential panic and maybe start to break through some key levels. Of course, we're around that 420 area, blaze it, that red to green line, and then of course that $4 whole dollar level area as potential markers. Been pretty far away from that point to immediately drop off from there, but that was the trade factor going into that one, and then it started to dip a little bit off of that, started to push a little bit closer to VWAP, and then again said it the same thing of it's not a profitable opportunity, and especially with a PDT account, that is just the stupidest type of thing to do. And that's, I think, why I got so caught up in that of just holding these backholder trades, is because it was just like, but the day trade, it's just so valuable. I can't waste it. And it just keeping myself in handcuffs so many times with that, and losing the open perspectiveness that is needed in order to trade these. Allowing myself just to say, hey, this is this minuscule, tiny little paper cut loss. Take it and spend that money on the loss in order to have the open perspective to be allowed to see, okay, now it's topping here a little bit. I'm gonna get on in the bottom pretty much perfectly at 4.3 here before it started to fall off, break to new low day. That was the awesome trade, little block that I was looking for at that point too. So then covering again nicely along the way. And these little covers were mainly based upon if any big bidder blocks started to step up and say, okay, we saw a little big bid flash there. Let's cover into strength here. Saw another little flash there as it broke to new low day. Nice little cover there just above 405. Does what it wants to do and then continues to break lower and lower, covering nicely with that. So again, it's, and I'm still in the frame of mind that I'm fine with these scaling out of the trades in profit and still being just kind of all in or all out on the exits for losers, because it's sometimes it does not produce the most profitable. But again, I go back to that, it's that win rate example, and this is why I'm doing this practice and paper trading in the first place, is to increase that win rate and understand when and where and why these things. Because now looking back to, I can say, yeah, trying to get a short here, that was kind of stupid. If it did start to print lower and lower and test this, then maybe I could take some slippage and say that is a far more probable trade as it starts to break there. But still at this point here, that's a very less probable trade for how many cents do I think I'm saving if I think it's going to go from there, versus waiting a little bit and potentially getting a little bit of slippage on that field and getting in a far more probable trade from that point, versus the very probable trade that I saw from here of the topping action that I had there, then breaking to new lows at that point. So, and then, yeah, I mentioned here, it's really still not dead. The daily it's still rising on the daily with an intradaily perspective as well too. It's of course broke that little wedge that is to the bottom. That was my short trade thesis, but still not dead and still above that $4 whole dollar level area. So maybe we do get some long action here, potentially what should be bearish action that doesn't ever happen. So then it starts to become bullish action eventually. So we'll keep it on the watch list for now, potentially for a long push on that one. Great idea for me on the long on the backside. Of course, I don't have to grade the little stupid choppy ones, but I give myself a B for the grade on that trade there. But it's very nice of trading from 4.3 at a perfect bottom to 3.9. Nice profit opportunity there. And then execution wise, give myself an A for how it was scaling out and kind of picking the bottoms very nicely there, and just again scaling out into strength. And I know that's going to apply very well to as I'm scaling up my position sizing in order to not disrupt the flow of the market that way too. I know what kind of size I'm wanting to be trading on these types of tickers, but then also just securing profits as they're there, taking money off the table that way, and actually taking winners as they are there and not making these winners into losers, or trying to force more out of the trade than is there itself. Oh, goodness. That was SPRB. Let's get into PTPI. A very, very beautiful long here today. Glad I had this one on the watch. Again, very, very choppy daily, kind of like PPSI, PP. But then similar on the daily here, nice little beautiful ascending wedge line bottom, and then taking out today's action here, these top days as well. So another little wedge, but more so on the daily as compared to SPRB today. I knew this one needed to have the volume. Again, this is a 6 million floater, American Pharmaceutical. They do have like 4.6 million shares left that I found through warrants, and then like $4 million left through a January shelf. So it's just, just keep all that data there as fundamentals. If it's not ludicrous or insane, again, it's useful information to have, but is that going to come out into effect today? It's just, you need a magic ball in order to understand if that potential is there. And it's really could only be spelled out if it's seen on the level 2 and time and sales. And I think that's really the only way you truly know until as it's happening that that potential is there, that, okay, this overhead that was potentially there today, or that we were trying to see in our preparation, is actually there. So it's a tough part to call of that preparation aspect of it, but regardless. So yeah, factoring in that wedge daily, I knew this one needed to have the volume in order for this trade to actually happen, and we sure did get it. So scaling in pretty nicely, just kind of right before that push, before that mark, as it was developing pretty nicely with volume. And even at that point, I was like, oh shoot, I missed my entry because I thought I was chasing a little bit with that first trade. But even at that too, now as I look back at it, that was really the key entry point of looking for the confirmation, as we can get rid of this a little bit just for the scale aspect of it. But looking at that key point, that became the break-even point of this 3.8 mark. And then this candle too, testing that mark as well. If it started to pull back below that point, well, of course, definitely we know the trade probability would be far from over on this one, because this was the kind of key factor area, not this hard line specifically, but I mean right around this mark, if the gods and the powers that be of how that line gets there, if that mark has any significance, this is going to kind of be the time of reckoning for that point. So selling as we do get a nice perk above that, just again take profits into that breakout, see how it gets filled, see how it gets traded, just as using that not only as an opportunity to take profits, but use as an indicator to see, okay, how is it getting filled? Did I did the price actually get tapped there and just come back immediately? How is it moving from there? Did I get filled even so fast that it just happened even before price really even got there to that point? Different factors that can affect or go into add to the overall intra-trade thesis that way. But we get a nice little bounce off of VWAP again, off of that line and range as it pulls back off of that point. And I thought this was going to be another little double toppy or a little lower high that became a doji. So taking off a little bit more into that and still respecting my entry price as a potential risk point for the knowing that if the trade started to go there, then it was definitely going to be over for me in my mind from there. But we do get, again, another high day push there, selling into that at 410 point. And then I thought this was for my last little, I had 5 shares, I think, for that last little 2 shares. Thought this was going to be, got a very exhaustive volume candle at that point above 4.2. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if I get 4.25, I had an order in at 4.25 for a while and just didn't really get filled there. So I said, okay, I'll take it off around 4.20 or wherever I got above that. And then it started to sell off a little bit. So I thought that was going to be the end. And we got another, of course, it just does a little kind of, just barely reaches to new high of day, slaps 4.3. Thought that was going to be a potential another little, the end of the move there, because it was a very nice percentage move there already. But of course it does slam all the way to 5.2 after, did it halt? Yeah, 10.02 to 10.07. Yeah, that was the only one. Yeah, just funny. Of course, feeling like Tim Sykes with that one too. How many times he's done that before? If gets a nice little trade and it just rips even further past him after he's already out. That's a great problem to have, and I will be very glad to take that situation as compared to just being in the complete wrong trade and chart entirely. This was a great chart to be a part of, a great learning lesson as well too. And again, these are the types of ones that I think especially benefit from as well, of taking profits, scaling out along the way, because it's, who knows if it's going to go to 5.2, who knows, especially in these breakout trends. It's just a completely new defined area. It's just, it's like Mars, where do we go? What are we going to find? What are we going to do? Who knows? Like the GMCs and the AMC, or the GMEs, the AMCs, how far is it going to go? Like, you going to expect $600? Does it go to $559? Does it go to $540? Does AMC go to $100 precisely, or does it go to $97 precisely as the top? So in these new breakout and just exponential kind of almost parabolic moves, it's anybody's best guess of where it's going to go, trying to predict it that way. But great learning lessons from this one. Great experience overall to be in that one. Grade for me on the trade, A+. Very nice opportunity on the thesis for that one today. And execution-wise, I gave myself a little bit of a B. I gave myself a B because, of course, trying to hold myself or push myself even closer to perfection, we still had a heck of a lot more room of opportunity and volume behind this one to potentially push it. So not perfect, but still very good nonetheless. BFRI, my last trader, just kind of a little sketchy. Well, I also have GRTX as well too, which will be interesting to see. Of course, it's up in there. But BFRI, very nice mover. This multi-day boy had a very nice move in the after hours that was just like, shoot. Like, there's the move I was looking for, trying to trade this one these past few days here. And, of course, it happens after hours when nobody cares and nobody's paying attention. But still holding nicely through there. Gets the push all the way above 10.5 here. And then pre-market just kind of blah. But then before market open, do get a little push closer to the bell. And then does a little bottom fake out below VWAP. Continues to build nicely, squeezes into a halt, squeezes all the way to 14.63, beautiful, and comes back down and just continues to build here. And then this was just a very cheeky, like 2-share trade. It would be, had I be trading full position size or bigger position size than normally, this would have been a far scaled down trade because of the probability and cheekiness of this one just potentially hitting 13.5 again after my entry here and just dumping back to VWAP closer. But in my mind's eye, it was just building a little bit too good for me and continuing to push. And we did get this reject candle here that tried to break out and, shoulda, coulda, woulda again, had like 14. I knew I still want to have like that 10% key area that with these type of parabolic movers, you got to be looking for 10% at least in my viewpoint. But like 14 of like 13, 2-ish, wherever I was getting filled, 13.1-ish maybe. Like 14.3 was going to be my key area. Of course, that ends up being the exact perfect top that it runs into. So lucking out on an exit there, having one sell order on that 1 share, and then just using the last one as a lottery ticket to say this is a parabolic mover, big volume. It was over $1.2 billion volume that day, which was crazy to see. Using it as a lottery ticket to say it's already up pretty crazily, and to be buying at that point too already was still kind of sketchy in itself. So we'll see where it goes here. We've locked in some profits as they are there, but then of course as it's pushing below my entry price, taking profits, cutting smartly on a dumb entry. That is my trading career in its entirety, of just kind of stupid or dumb entries, but then exiting smartly. I hold myself to at least some amount of smart on one side of the trade, but sometimes it's flip-flopping those in unison can be better at times. But anyway, yeah, nice little opportunity experience to be part of. Pushes below VWAP for that morning session, then comes back above the afternoon, but then just fades back to the lows there. Still on watch, of course, because of where it's at on this daily point, but maybe we need a little bit more consolidation time for the just boom explosion we had today for any more type of drawn out pattern or more obvious pattern to recognize to play off of in these next few days. Grade myself for the idea on this trade, give it like a C, and execution wise, give myself a C as well too. It's just kind of average all across the board, nothing awesome or spectacular, and kind of lucking out with that top tick exit there too. But again, great experience that way. I mentioned, I'll get into GRTX here. Of course, I gotta go after. It just saw it spiking in the after hours close here. I'm still looking for any news catalyst. I was just checking Twitter so hard, like refreshing it over and over again. Is there any news catalyst out on this one? What's going on in this bad boy? We traded this one before. This American biotech with 10 million floater and multi-day move, of course, that it's been in. Looking for, as I'm seeing this price action movement happen, all full well knowing that, famous last words of these things of, well, it's up too much, or it's just too exhaustive and not a lot of volume on getting short this one. And this one was actual 200 shares short through Trade Zero. And why I felt so confident to actually go in from having been paper these past 2-3 weeks almost, back in November, to now all of a sudden, okay, I'm back again to trading $1,000 position size. I mean, that was a kick. That was that energy drink that I've been missing for a while, and I was kind of feeling a little bit tired, and it was like, whoa, let's get right back in the action. And when I normally have not traded in the afternoon in a long, long time, but that was definitely get you right back in the action. So just trading this parabolic move short of knowing how many times I've seen these even if they don't just pull back immediately directly off of that peak, that the fade opportunity is potentially there. So I knew it was going to be, there could have been a slim potential probability that I did hold this one overnight. The fees were like $3 in total for 200 shares through Trade Zero. So nothing crazy ridiculous for that fees to short it. But it's a good little introduction back into the world of real trading. I got a little bit cheeky and was 4.8 was kind of that key area in my mind of, not like a 5.2 I got as my fill there. Just to say, okay, is that kind of 10% or just below? I think it's above actually 10% or beyond. It's below 10%. I think 470ish maybe. Too much math, but yeah, getting a little cheeky and kind of just covering nicely as I covered a little bit in that $5 hold dollar level area, as it was kind of tinkering around here and knowing that I wanted to get into this video and into more of my recap and maybe more so too of just like, okay, that's enough action for me for just high rolling, high tooting action there. I just covered the rest at 490 or something, kind of got scared out of that. But of course it does end up dumping even lower than that. So made a quick $40 on that one. That is trading. I tell you what, trading is so freaking easy. All you got to do is just push buttons and you make money. That's just how the stock market works. It's as easy and simple as that. If you take my 7-week course, you too can learn how to short these after hours movers that way. But I lucked out a little bit on that one. We'll see what it does in these next, what it does tomorrow, if it has just more of a rest day or any action or identifiable patterns to come out of it, or if it potentially does want to start to fade, similar to how a just random after hours mover on a dying bleeding daily with no multi-day action move setup, how these will potentially just have that perk in the after hours with a news catalyst that comes out right after the close, and then they continue to just drop off and bleed and die, which I love to trade those ones. We'll see if it does that type of action or if we get any curling here closer to back to $5. It'll be interesting to watch. Those are the end of my traders, and gave myself a grade on this one. I'll give it an A for idea of the grade, and execution-wise, C or D for how I was chickening out and just, but overall good. Just dipping the toe back in the water again of getting back into that natural position sizing, actual position sizing, and the thrill of the trade. And that's what I want to avoid, is getting in that mindset that, oh, it's a thrill, and you're cranking that wheel and you're spinning the lottery, and those are bad analogies, but yeah, cranking the wheel, looking for the 777s. It is not. And that's what I'm focusing more and more on because of the paper trading, because of this little small position sizing, is eliminate that type of emotion from the trade and just trade the trade itself. Look at the factors that are there. Trade the trade, not the P&L, over and over and over again. But yeah. Oh gosh, that was an experience. That was fun to get me motivated again to get in this video. And then I'll mention AABB, OTC. Nice little second day move here. I had it on the watch list, and of course not really so keyed on it to trade it because of those OTC fees again, but just looking at it in review to see if OTCs are going crazy, then I may have to end up getting back into that frame of mind. Nice close from yesterday, holds that red to green line of 23 mark today. Perks from there, but then tries to break below VWAP to test that point. But only low we get to here was 2302, so it doesn't actually test 23, bounces up from there. Nice little grind to 10% opportunity, a little bit beyond 10% opportunity right in that morning session, then just dies, death, fades off, continues to do whatever it wants to do. And it still did not break that red to green line, and it still got the breakout point, like I mentioned yesterday too, we broke above 25 today, so now we got this kind of key area 27 sickish, this little humpy high there as potential target or key areas to get involved in with in the future that way. But that were all the charts that I want to mention. Watching for tomorrow, SOPA for a third day dumpage play, similar to and I wanted to mention this with SPRB, but looking at trying to model these plays off of blue that happened on the 15th and AVCT on the 13th. But looking for this, like blue happened here, we're on this third day play, had a little rest day on that second day, and then just the sentiment there. Pre-market action is like, oh, we're going to be potentially nice today, but then just ends up dumping there. And AVCT, the same thing. These weren't the best chart representations, but these were the quick ones that I did find that did follow along those guidelines and this type of trade sentiment that I was looking for. And this one a little bit different, but the daily shows it a little bit clearer on, okay, we're in this third day, surge pattern. Second day was kind of choppy or whatever it wants to do, not precise exactly. Pre-market has to like a little perk and say, oh, okay, we're kind of nice, but then opening closer to below VWAP and then ends up dumping. And this one actually I think was the offering that was a part of, so that was a bad representation as well on that. But that's a chart that I'm looking for. And the same thing on SPRB today. What happened today on SOPA, and it's going to be short sale restricted, it looks like, tomorrow. So we'll have to keep our eye on that bad boy. And this one was crazy on that first green day, just out of nowhere on that stupid news catalyst of being added to the Russell 2000, but keeping our eyes on it. I am also long two tickers that are very low volume and could be very easily diluted and just throw out an offering out of nowhere. TOMZ and ACET. I was just going through old past videos and seeing, oh, okay, this one was a nice first green day on the 30th of November here, and it's still in a nice little range, in a breakout range, and pulling it up today too, even in the afternoon. It's holding pretty nicely just below that. If it does get any volume, puts out a news catalyst. And the reason why I'm getting long these ones, and of course it's very small position size still with my cash account, but swinging these ones overnight, looking for more than just the 232 that it hit today. These ones I know they could drop that. They're just sketchy companies. Their offering ability is very high. I know most of them will need a cash, and ACET kind of same thing of this little multi-day hold and push and breakout levels, has a little bit more on the past of the history chart here to get through, but could put some nice moves in on that one. Yeah, I know they could. They're just so crazy diluted, and holding these ones, especially for how low volume they are right now, is pretty sketchy. But in the same light, that lack of volume could be a good sentiment for still being long right now, to be in before the actual volume is there and the actual hysteria is there when the price action starts to move so high and the actual opportunity to put out that offering feels most opportune. Because if these guys are smart, why would you be taking, if they've got anybody with a brain in the stock market and looking at this chart to say, okay, we need the cash and let's put out the offering today. Oh no, well look at the chart. We're right next to this breakout point. If we just push this a little bit, we could get this thing to go 17, rip to 18 new highs, and then we can throw out the offering there. Get plenty more easy shares that way too. So, of course, that's talking to the cocaine smoking, snorting idiot in the back. That's may or may not have any effect, but for right now, we're closing pretty nicely. So we'll see where we open on both of these tomorrow. Again, just very small position size, just testing an educational, looking to see if there's actually any opportunity or truth behind that thesis for that trade that way. And then AVCT, I did want to mention as well for today, actually, on where it's holding. They had this little multi-day run, very nice movement today on not so much crazy volume. They do have $65 million still raisable from a shelf, and also $12 million from Series A convertibles. But for the price action that was holding today, it's breaking above 1.8-ish mark here, which I'd like to see that little mark on this little high from the bounce, the sell-off on that big spike. Could see some opportunity, or could see this thing just peel back down to 1.6 and just continue its little sideways action. But keeping an eye on it. That is all that I had. Oh my gosh, 47-minute video. That is just absolutely insane. I sincerely thank you guys for watching and sticking through all of this. Bad boy Mama Jamma. I will catch you guys on the next one.